I love how we're gonna get copyright struck off our opener.
You think? I don't think we
Yeah,
will. I don't think there's. I don't think it's clean enough to do it.
we're gonna get it. Okay.
We'll see. I mean, if I have to, I'll re-edit it. I mean, it won't take long to add the little clip on it, but I don't think we'll get busted on that.
Hmm.
Have we got busted on the Beatles one yet?
No.
Oh, I think we're good then.
So what did I miss? We're gonna get busted for Living Color.
Yeah, I think.
You think so?
I think.
Nah, I don't think we will.
I think we roll the dice.
I'm for it. I'm just saying.
Roll the dice. Danger's my middle name.
We've known each other for so long. Your heart's been aching, but you're too shy to say it. Inside, we both know what's been going on. We know the game and we're gonna play it. And if you ask me how I'm feeling, don't tell me you're too blind to see. Never gonna give you up, never gonna let you down, never gonna run.
So,
I'm getting a haircut tomorrow.
Yeah, I trimmed my sides.
Getting a haircut tomorrow, but the beard will stay beautiful and flowing.
This is coming back. I'm bringing it back. I've decided.
Very, very gray.
Yeah, well,
No,
So I
I'm
am.
just joking.
Right,
Oh, it
you
is.
beard the whole time. What do you mean it's coming?
no, I'm going back to the Gurfers link.
The caveman look.
I am. I mean, I got nothing else going on for me, so I might as well.
He's gonna bring sexy back.
That's all. Yeah.
Yeah, buddy.
Sexy back. Bruh. So
You
sweet.
do what
Okay,
you
Ryan,
got.
point to me. Perfect. Point to Christian. Yeah, thank you. Point to yourself. Oh, jeez. Ugh,
Nice.
There
pass.
you go.
Get them pepper schmonies.
Pepper. No, see, I have the little. I don't have pepper schmonies. I have like the little miniature size pepper schmonies, like the little bitty ones.
Yeah.
Hey, everybody! Welcome back to another episode of the UNT3 podcast, where we bring you all music all the time. I'm your host Ryan Gurfers with co-host Mr. Hero Joel William Cox, William Joel Cox, Billy Joel, whatever you want to call him. That's who he is. And just so you know, ladies, he's single. Throwing that out there. This man is no longer single.
Oh,
He's gonna get it done next Monday in one take. Christian Fisher.
Oh
That's
man.
what's happening right there. One take. It's getting
One
done.
Take.
There will be no cut. Let's try that again. All getting done. Boom. Just like that.
Just like that.
Just like that. But man, when we get together, all we do is we like to talk music, cut up, hang out, and we want to bring you into this conversation. We're going to be bringing you some pretty awesome content today because we're going to be coming at you with an all Christian music episode. It's
What
going to
can I
be
say, man.
amazing.
Music all
Right?
about me.
And so we're going to dive right in. And I've got a few things pulled up that we'll get into in a minute. But really, I want to ask this question because when we first met, it seemed like the Christian music scene, or at least that what we would listen to when we were together as far as Christian music, was more of a Christian rock type of music, I would say, kind of, sort of. But it seems like over time, over the last 20 years, it almost seems like the Christian music scene has kind of evolved a little bit. And it's more into like praise, like rock praise music, I would say. Does that make sense? Would
Yeah,
you,
it
would
makes
you,
sense.
would you agree that we've gone kind of away from like Christian rock concert more to like a Christian praise band type thing?
I don't know if I would say that that's necessarily what's happened. Because, and Joel, you tell me if your experience was any different, but growing up in the church and growing up around the Christian music scene, it seemed like there were a lot of things out there that you could find and listen to that was similar to whatever your taste in music was. I just think the things that are popular, so maybe, I guess you may be right since it's trends, but I don't know. I guess right now what's popular. I don't really listen to Christian music radio, so I couldn't tell you. It does feel like it's the more still on the rock side of things, but geared a little more towards the praise and worship. And I don't know, hip hop has started to really make its way into the Christian music scene, which I think is really neat. Because growing up, hip hop was limited to bands like DC Talk and let's just face it, really cheesy bands.
Yeah, I mean, you had like DC Talk, and then you had like the Grits, which were Christian kind of towards the end of DC Talk, but you were severely limited.
So that'll bring me up to kind of my next question too, is when we were younger, and we're going to go to church real quick. Okay. We're going to church.
Mhm.
I remember being in elementary school, and when we would go to church, you in the pew in front of you, you picked up the hymnal book and you open up and you sang a hymnal, and you might only sing like line number 1 all the way through, or you'd sing lines 1 and 2, even though there were like 8 lines to sing.
It was usually lines 1 and 3.
And so really, but nowadays, a lot of church plants, right? A lot of churches that are coming out now that aren't of the traditional, like grounded in their roots, Southern Baptist or whatever. We won't get into a religious debate here, but the hymnals have kind of gone away, and it goes back to what I talked about. A lot of churches seem like they've got praise bands. And so what is your preference? Do you prefer, like, if you go to church, do you prefer to have a praise band, or do you want to go old school with, like, let's sing the hymnals with the church choir?
You know, go ahead.
No, I'll let you take this one.
You know, what's funny is before I started going to the church that it'll remain nameless, but the church that I go to now, I was very resistant to the whole praise band movement. I didn't like it. I thought it was pandering to the younger crowd. But then, you know, you end up going to church in a certain place for over a decade and you get used to it, right? And it's what you know. But the other day, it's probably about a day or two before I brought this topic up. On a whim, I just decided, hey, I'm going to listen to, hold on, let me pull it up so I get it right. Where'd he go? Yeah, Alan Jackson's Precious Memories album.
Yeah.
And I was instantly transported back to being a kid, sitting in a pew with a hymnal, my great granddaddy on my one side and my grandma on my other side, my parents, you know, just. So if you ask the nostalgic person in my here, I prefer the piano, the organ, and the church choir. But as somebody who doesn't go to a church like that, I don't have a problem with the praise band either. So.
Yeah. Yeah.
What about you, Joel? What do you prefer?
Well, I mean, I'm going to combine both of your questions into one, because I was thinking about your first one, and then I'll loop it into what you've asked. But like, for me, like, it seems like in the 70s is when the praise and worship kind of started deviating from the hymnals. And, you know, you had like Keith Green, who came out and started writing, you know, these great kind of praise and worship songs that kind of fell outside of, you know, and I'm not saying it wasn't done before that, but that's where it seemed to kind of really take off. And then the 80s, you know, for me, like, being in the church, I came from a traditional church, Episcopal church growing up. We did the hymnals, and then there was an acoustic guitar group, which was considered, you know, taboo at that time. You know, how can you play with acoustic guitars? And our church was pretty progressive at that point. So, you know, I kind of grew up on the not really the hymnal side as much as we had a book that we sang songs out of that was piano based, and then it became guitar based and so forth. And then what I've seen is just a natural progression from this more acoustic-y, piano-driven hymnal kind of direction to now the praise and worship is what it is right now. Where it's like big and whatnot. And to go to your first question, I feel like the music has always been there because, like in the '80s, you had Sandy Patty, you had
Heck yeah,
Michael
Sandy
W.
Patty.
Smith, you had Amy Grant. I mean, at that time, Amy Grant was doing just straight. You had Carmen, who we talked about in a previous episode. These people were huge. I mean, they were selling out. And then in the '90s, oh, and then you had like the kind of more alternative, which was like Stryper, Petra, all of those bands.
Petra.
And, I mean, Petra was selling out. Was selling out the Summit in Houston,
Yeah.
and Stryper was playing with like Ozzy Osbourne and all these other crazy metal guys. And then in the '90s, you saw a progression of this kind of ska and punk movement that kind of, started to show up. And then, the 2000s, like Fisher said, it seems like the 2000s, you saw a movement away from what we traditionally saw. Like Skillet is considered a Christian band, but they're huge now. And the one thing that I've noticed is that the praise and worship has kind of always been the same, but what I'm seeing now is I'm seeing more of the trend is always to follow what's popular. So like right now, hip hop's big. Lecrae is like huge. He's a superstar.
Yeah.
North Texas alum, by the way. There's a lot of groups that are huge. Newsboys are still huge. So they're still out there. So I don't think it's necessarily been a division between the two because I feel like, Hillsong is cranking out stuff, but I mean, they're out of their church and then they release the music people and all the other Bethel and all those groups. So I don't really think there's been a division. I think that, as far as a separate, praise and worship, I think versus the rock and rap and all the other stuff, I think it's always been there. But there's just not a lot of groups that challenge music. They follow the trends, and that's what sells. I noticed when we were trying to get on a label, the label loved us. We had 5 of the major labels that loved us, but we didn't sound like anybody, so they didn't sign us because they're like, we don't know how to market you. But if you sounded like Limp Bizkit, we'll sign POD. We'll sign them, tomorrow.
Yeah.
We'll sign, anybody that sounds like somebody popular. And so as far as what I prefer, like for me, I'm kind of like Fisher in the sense that I like the nostalgia of hymns and whatnot. And I think it's a good foundation for when you're learning about Christianity. If that's something that you believe in, which we do. I think it's foundational in that aspect. But for me personally, I like music. I like more modern. When I listen, like praise and worship overall doesn't do it for me very much. But those artists outside the box, like I can put on POD and I love it. I can put on MXPX. I can put on Five Iron Frenzy. Those are all Christian bands and I absolutely love it. And I get more from that than I do technically from a hymnal. But, it is definitely something that's nostalgic when you're sitting on the back porch with your family and someone starts singing I'll Fly Away, which technically isn't a hymn, but or Amazing Grace, or some of these things, Be Thou My Vision, like those. You can't help but enjoy that.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. It was very hard for me growing up to get into the Christian music scene because I thought it was always kind of a cop out, if you will, for a Christian band. Oh, if you like Metallica, check out this band. If you like Slayer, check out this band. Like, well, I like Metallica because they're Metallica. Or I like Slayer because they're Slayer. I don't want to listen to the Jesus side of that coin, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I want to listen if I'm gonna listen to Christian music. I want it to be authentic. I want it to be their music. I don't want it to be, oh, they're on this label because they sound like Limp Bizkit, right? So
Mhm.
we signed POD.
Yeah.
Um,
By the way, I love POD, but I agree with you.
and I also, one of the reasons I kind of lean more towards the hymnals or the traditional Christian music is because I find a lot of current Christian music to be very vague and not very specific and relies heavily on the usage of pronouns instead of actually using his name,
Hmm.
right? Like if you're going to call yourself a Christian band and you're going to write that kind of music, put Jesus's name in your so people know who you're speaking about,
Hmm.
right? And like I'm just going to read the lyrics to one of my very favorite, I think it is my favorite hymn. Um the hymn is "It Is Well With My Soul." But you don't get lyrics like this in modern Christian music. My sin, not in part but the whole, is nailed to the cross, and I bear it no more. Right? Like, my thought is if you're going to be a Christian band, go all the way and right, profess it, believe it, and then let everything fall where it falls. If you're, if your goal is to get signed by a record label, right? Or just be a lot of popular Christian music artists today. I remember when I was a kid, they were playing the church camp circuit, right? Like Jeremy Camp. I remember having him at my church camp one year and thinking this guy's pretty cool. And then a few years later, there he is putting out his first album and everything.
Yep.
So there's my little soapbox, if you will.
So for me, I'll throw a curveball in my answer, right? So one of the greatest Christian music experiences I ever had was in the 90s when my neighbor that lived across the street from me and my mom, uh, Nana, that's what we
Yeah,
called her,
Nana.
Nana, who
Yeah.
baked some of the best homemade mac and cheese and sweet potato pies. God rest her soul. Nana, I just got to say, I have not had a sweet potato pie since you have passed. I have not tasted one and I will not. But she invited me to her church in Arlington one weekend. Now, keep in mind, Nana was an African American woman and she went to an African American church. And when I remember when I walked into the door, and this is a big church, we're talking like a sanctuary that'll seat several hundred, probably I would say around 500 to 600 people, and it was full. And I remember walking in, and I was the only white person in the building. And the kids' choir went up on the stage. And when the kids started singing, let me tell you something. The sounds that were coming off that stage, I was like, oh, wow. Kids' choir finished, and then the adults came on. And let me tell you something. If the Holy Spirit didn't move through you when that gospel choir got up there and started singing, man. And I mean, there was no hymnal, right? There was no band. They just went up there and they did their thing.
Mhm.
And I mean, they might be saying the same line over and over and over and over and over and over and over. But man, the runs that they would do, just the amount of like, it wasn't a performance, but it was a performance, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And I tell you what, man, that gospel scene, I was like, and I wanted to go back every weekend because the choir was it. And I was like, man. And so really, I think that my answer is curveball because it doesn't fit the two that I put out there. So if I had to go off the two that I put out there, I would go more towards the praise band side of
Mhm.
things, just because I remember being a kid and going, and I would sit in big people church with my mom and my dad.
Big
Right?
church. Yeah.
Big church. I got to sit in big church, and when we sang the songs, one, I didn't know them, and two, they were really boring. And so I was like, this isn't any fun. but now being an adult and going to church, I prefer the band. But I want to go into the next question because Christian kind of touched on it a little bit, and
Sure.
I have a feeling I know what his answer is going to be to this. But the question is, do you prefer a song that the lyrics are original that the artist has written, or do you prefer a Christian song where the lyrics are Bible verse, and so they're just taking the lyrics out of the Bible and using those for their song?
Go for it, Joel. I've gone first the last couple questions. You go first.
No, I mean, for me, it's, and this is a cop out answer. For me, I don't mind either as long as the content is sound. Kind of like how Fisher mentioned, using love instead of God. I'm not really against that per se, but I think that if you have, but I do agree with him in that aspect. Like if I'm singing praise and worship, I want it to be like based off of, real, like
Truth.
what it is. But the other thing is for me, authenticity in whoever is performing it is huge for me. And I've seen people dial it in and, musically it's boring. But they sing with such, they're so passionate in what they're singing is so truthful that it moves me. And then I've seen people that are passionate and their music is ridiculous and it moves me. So for me, I think it's more about, the heart and the authenticity of the person who's doing the song more than whether it's scripturally based or whether it's lyrics that they wrote that is kind of loosely based off scripture. So like for me, it's as long as it's sound and it's authentic, then I'm always down for that.
Well, I think he was talking about like being literal Bible verses, like Matthew 5:16.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing. Like, I can go
Yeah.
either way. Like, but if they're singing lyrics that aren't based off, or that they're based off the Bible, but don't necessarily quote the Bible, I'm fine either way.
Well, like my favorite Christian artist is Phil Wickham, and what I love about Phil is his songs. Now, I haven't really listened to his most recent albums. I tend to stick more towards his earlier stuff, but his earlier stuff, and most of it really, like you have to really know your Bible to get what he's referencing,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I love that, and I love when an artist, when they write their lyrics, you're like, oh, I know where in the Bible that is. He's referencing this. He's referencing this verse, or he's referencing, or she referencing these 3 verses, right?
Yeah.
That's what I like because, one for me anyway, it keeps me reminded. Oh, yes, I do know that verse, right? I've got that verse memorized. I've got that, and listening to that song reminds me of that, and it reminds me of the whatever the verse is referring to. And usually when I listen, especially to him or to Crowder, when I listen to them, that's when I'm like, I was supposed to listen to this for a reason, right? I needed to be reminded of that today, or so anything that's like that. I guess I'm kind of like Joel in that aspect. Like they don't have to have quoted the Bible in their music, but if I listen to it and I know what they're talking about and I know what they're referencing and their songs are based on the Bible, then I have no problem with it.
Yeah. Yeah. Kind of like a song like Flood by Jars of Clay. I mean, we know what we're talking about. And he's talking about his ideas as far as, Noah, from a Noah perspective, even though it doesn't necessarily quote Noah in the Bible. I mean, Noah in the song. But yet that song still is, it's just as moving to me. And and whatnot. You know, I can still praise and worship to that just as much as I can something that's a hymnal that's directly lifted off the Bible.
So, yeah.
Gotcha. So I want to do this. I want to kind of like switch gears.
Okay.
And so what I want to do is I'm going to play you. I've got a few things pulled up here. I'm going to play you a snippet of a song. I'm not going to tell you who it is. I'm pretty sure you've heard all of these. But what I want to do is I want you to I want to see if you can name off who it is if you remember it.
Ooh,
But then
I love the games.
but comment on if not necessarily this artist or this group. If you don't need to comment on them, but does this artist or this group drum up another group from the time period or something that you think about? So,
Sure.
All right.
so
I like
let's
this.
see. So here we go. I guarantee you both know who this is.
Okay. Sandy Patty.
Probably.
How could you walk when you went down that dusty street? How could you speak when all your
I know Joel's got it.
friends checked out? How could you love after the great betrayal?
Okay.
How could you reach out when they
Great track.
It is. It's actually okay. So that is.
We
the
can't do
af-
sexy fades on the Christian episode.
Well, that is.
I was literally thinking, I was like, is he gonna do the sexy fade? Because this is the Christian episode.
So that is the Afters.
Or Bliss.
They were known as Bliss as well.
See, I wasn't into that band like you guys were.
Yeah, but you've been to Not Called Common shows where they played though.
No, I have
Yeah.
not. I've never been to a Not Called Common Bliss show.
Really?
I could have swore you have.
You didn't go to that one at Trees when we all went with Sherry and all them?
I remember you playing not at Trees, but at
I mean, not at Trees. At not the Liquid Lounge, but Dada. Not Dada.
Curtain Club.
Curtain Club.
yes, I went to the Curtain Club. And
They
saw
played that
you.
show.
I saw you and I saw Rhythm.
You didn't see.
I did not see Bliss.
Man, dude,
Bliss was in between us. It was us, Bliss, and then Rhythm.
Rhythm headlined it. I'll say this
He was
about
in the
Bliss.
bathroom.
I'll tell you this about Bliss. They are probably, because I never did get to see them in a stadium, but they're probably the loudest band I've ever heard in a
Bliss?
small venue. Yes.
Or the Afters, yeah.
Yeah. They.
Why did they change their name?
There was already a band called Bliss.
Mhm. Now, this song that I chose is it's off of their album called "I Wish We All Could Win," and the name of that song is "Thank God I'm Not the One." And we just talked about lyrics and what we prefer, but for me, lyrically, this is one of my favorite songs because it makes me want to raise the question to you as well. After I read some of these lyrics to you, the question will be. What song or Christian song that you've heard do the lyrics move you to the point like you
Oh, we
feel
could
this,
hear all day.
right? But for me, this it's how could you walk when you went down that dusty street? How could you speak when all your friends checked out? How could you love after the great betrayal? How could you reach out when they nailed you down? True as true can be. That's what they say you are to me when I'm so fake. Does your heart ache? If I had been the one, I would not have been that strong. If I had been the one, I'd have been long gone. And I mean, and it continues on to where, I mean, verse 4, how could you watch while your whole world was dying? And did it all happen because we let you down? I mean, it's deep, deep lyrics. It's like, man. And then it just goes on to talk about how they end the song with, man, thank God I'm not the one.
Yeah.
Because I mean, I would, and so for me, I'm like, oh. So
What I like about those lyrics, and maybe not necessarily the song, because the little bit that you played wasn't really grabbing me. I was like, it's an early 2000s band. I know that. But the thing I like about those lyrics is just how it puts that mirror on the listener. Like, dude, you're the reason this is happening.
yeah,
Like, you're the reason he's having to walk down this dusty road, and all of those questions that he asked at the beginning. How could you? How could you? How could you?
yeah,
And then did this happen because? And the answer to that is most definite yes. It happened because.
yeah,
And that's what I like about those lyrics, is it forces the listener to at least confront their own culpability in putting Jesus on the cross.
Yeah. Well, I think the thing that I like about lyrics like this is it's accessible. If you put a song that's, Jesus, 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 sometimes people are turned off automatically just because we live in this world where it's canceled. We want to cancel everything because people equate Christ or, God or Christianity with judgment. And so it can easily put up a wall. But like a band like this that has lyrical content that, if you don't know what he's singing about, you may go, wow, that's just really good. That's just really good. I love the music, the drums, his vocals are great. Oh man, he's kind of introspective. He's talking about, what is he talking about? Like what do you mean? Is he, he's glad he's not the one. And it can allow conversations to happen. And that's what I think what's really great about bands like the Afters and stuff like that is on a song like this, it can allow, does he necessarily say Jesus? No, he doesn't say Jesus in all the lyrics, but it allows people to maybe have, for lack of a better term, a gateway opening, maybe a softening that can open up to more conversations.
Yeah, it doesn't automatically turn off a non-believer.
Yeah.
sure.
Go,
And
I'm
not 100% certain about this specific album, but what's amazing about this is if it is the same album, this has MySpace Girl on it, I think. But what's the one that has Beautiful Life? Is it this album?
That's this album.
Okay. What's great about this on a completely side note that kind of supports what I'm talking about, A Beautiful Life was the opening for, I believe, The Hills on MTV. It was the theme. It was the opening theme song. So
It's
have
It's Beautiful Love.
Oh, Beautiful Love. Sorry, A Beautiful
Yeah.
Love. Sorry. But you have this song that's being used on this pretty, depending on your views. Like, I don't get into those shows,
Right.
but you have all these young people and they're like buying this song up like, candy. And yet you have a song like this that maybe if they listen to can open up those conversations for people to have. And I think that that's the beauty of a band like the Afters,
Like
that you have this great song and it's looped in with this other song that maybe they're listening to it and maybe in a moment it just causes them to ask questions. So
yeah, that's what I love about. Yep, Snip indeed.
Well, go ahead.
I was gonna say that's what I love about. That's what I loved about Not Called Common, your band. Pardon me. Ezra's lyrics were so complex, and I mean, none of y'all's songs just busting out the gate. Jesus, Jesus, Jesus.
yeah, we had a few, but those were typically saved for churches and stuff. But yeah, you're 100% right.
If we went and saw you at Dada or the Curtain Club or the Liquid Lounge or that was my favorite place to see you,
The Door, stuff like that.
Yeah, places like that, you're gonna get even the sunshine and how could you love me of this world,
Redwoods and Sunflowers.
There
I
you
love that
go.
song so much. God's Autograph.
Yeah.
We'll have to play that for our listeners someday. I loved it because the guy sitting at the bar, who's, you know, maybe an atheist or an agnostic, he's not going to sit there and go, "Oh my God, it's that Christian band again." You know, he might say it's a unique choice in singer, but you know,
Yeah.
at least when you read the lyrics, you really had to think about what is he talking about, and then once you realized, oh, this is a Christian band, you know,
Yeah.
that's what I appreciate about, I guess, bands like Not Called Common and Afters, and I guess even to a certain extent, oh God, what were their names out of Tyler?
Isley.
Isley.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
So there's a line in this song that's at the end that I didn't read, that I want to read. And he basically, what they're saying is, if I had been the one, and then it says, and all the things we think of as eternal would come undone. All I have to say is when I'm praying is thank God I'm not the one. And so it's just, I mean, for me, it's so deep, you know. I mean, when you sit back and really think about it, it's like, yeah, no joke. I mean, if it were up to me, everything that we do think of as eternal, I wouldn't be able to handle, and it would all crumble.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, lyrics like that just, they get me thinking. They get me like, wow.
Yeah.
But we could talk about this all day long. What I want to do is move on to the next band.
Okay,
Now,
I'm ready.
The next band, y'all have referenced already in this
Nice.
episode.
Wow.
So we're just going to go ahead. We're just going to go ahead. We're just going to go ahead and play it real quick and
Okay,
see
I'm ready.
see what it drums up for y'all.
Via Dolorosa. That's what it drums up for.
Every day is a new day. I'm thankful for every breath I take. I won't take it for granted. So I learn from my mistakes. It's beyond my control, so just bounce and let go. Whatever happens in this lifetime. So I trust in love. You have given me peace of mind. I feel so alive. For the very first time. I can't deny you. I feel so alive. I feel so alive. For the very first time. And I think I can fly.
And so, yeah. So I'll say this. When that song came out,
Mm.
I don't want to say that
song came out. My reaction just a second ago was the reaction then.
So for me, I had just
Hater.
started.
It's terrible.
Well, I had just started wondering and asking questions about Jesus, God, the Bible. And I remember I played that song on a loop over and over and over and over and over in my car, just because I thought the lyrics were cool. I thought the music was awesome. And so really, I would say early in my walk, like the infancy of my walk, that song was super popular. And really, I don't want to say it's what hooked me and got me in. That other things like YouTube played a huge part in that. But if we're talking music, this kind of pulled me in just because I was into that heavy scene, right? I liked that heavy music. But when I found out that this was a Christian band, I was like, wow.
No.
For the listeners that don't know, that was POD, and the song is Alive.
Yep.
And so
POD. Peace of
Y'all-
the dome.
Oh, you know what? You
y'all
stop.
take it away from there. So
Man.
what do y'all got?
Well, I mean, for me, my first introduction was when they did Southtown. That was so I knew of POD before because they were on Tooth and Nail, and then they had Southtown, which was like their big hit before this. And of course, that album Satellite just blew up. But you know, for me, like I knew what POD was. I knew what they, you know, it's payable on death is, you know, it's a biblical reference. But like I absolutely loved it. I think it's great. Great players. You know, great message. And you know, the other thing is they got kind of bashed because they were smoking hookahs and stuff on tour, and people were like, "How can you be a Christian and smoke a hookah?" And it's like they really did kind of tear down a bunch of kind of this. Not only did they offend some of the non-Christians with their testimonies and stuff, like on Howard Stern. Go watch that interview with them. I mean, they're preaching God, and in fact, at one point, the drummer pulls up his shirt and shows his tattoo of Christ on his back. And I mean, it's amazing to watch Howard Stern have this kind of interaction with those guys. But then on the Christian side, they broke down a bunch of taboos, because I was raised very much, here is the box that is Christianity, and if you asked what about this? Oh, well, no, it's well, where is it in the Bible? Show me in the Bible where it says that you can't do these things, or you're not supposed to do these things, or you're not supposed to say these things or watch these things. And I really feel like they were one of those bands that I was like, I never felt guilty from a spiritual level. I felt like I was disappointing people. And hearing them say, you know what, you can go to these shows, you can listen to this music, you can, you know, Stryper can open up for Ozzy Osbourne and still be a Christian band.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's other than music like this, there's two things that have kind of opened up my eyes to what the Bible is, and one was that, and one was a book called Art in the Bible, and it talked about how you can have an artist who paints a picture of Jesus and an artist that paints a picture of an apple. Tell me which one is more Christian, which one is more biblically based. And the truth is, it has nothing to do with what you paint as much as it is who you give credit to, who gave you that ability. And POD was one of those groups that kind of reinforced that idea. And Shara Warden, I don't know if you'll ever listen to this, but thank you for that book. I appreciate it. It changed my whole perspective. But POD was one of those groups that kind of supported that as well. So I absolutely, unlike Fisher, I loved this album. I loved POD even before all that stuff came out. And there's, you know, we need to take it to the UNT Do number 2. Let's do it.
I just look, in my elder years, I've come to realize that, you know, a band like POD will speak differently to different people.
Mm-hmm.
They don't speak to me at all.
And that's okay.
I think their music is derivative. I think it's a copycat. I just, don't get me started. But if, you know, I can't knock them for going out there, going on Howard Stern and laying it all out. Just like, here we are, like it or lump it, right?
Yeah. Speaking the truth.
Right. And so, you know, it's your hustle. You do it. But I just never could get into them. Like, you know, it was like, what are you? Are you Limp Bizkit or are
Wow.
you Deftones, right?
Wow.
It's like, just, I guess it goes back to what I said, you know, about 20 minutes ago about as long as you're original, right?
Yeah.
Because like a band like that reminds me of we are in this world, but we're not of this world.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And like obviously you have all this talent. Be original, be you, and preach the gospel, and you know, let that take you to wherever it's going to take you. And I'm not saying that they were just, oh, this is the popular sound, so let's be this. It just, when a scene gets popular, that's what everybody kind of inevitably gravitates towards, that kind of sound and whatnot. So
yeah. And it's hard. I mean, the thing is, it's hard, especially when I was younger. You know, I wanted to listen to Motley Crue. I wanted to listen to, I wasn't really into Metallica younger, but, you know, all the hard rock groups. And like Stryper came out, and it was like, I could listen to heavy music. And this is stuff that my parents aren't freaking out about. But it was still good, even though it was pretty much derived from that, or it came out from that metal scene that was so popular. And that's kind of what POD was for me, just like MXPX was for the punk side, and Five Iron Frenzy and the Supertones were on the ska side, and like Lecrae is on the rap side. I mean, and the Grits and all these other, and DC Talk, it's like
Bad Pig.
yeah. And there's a bunch of these other bands that like came out around that time. Skillet, when you listen to the first Skillet album, they sound like Nirvana. They were wanting to be Nirvana. Now you listen to them now and they sound like you feel like you're a wrestler going up to the ring as you're walking in. But back in the day, they sounded like Nirvana and that's what got them signed.
Yeah.
So, it's very, one of the things I can say, I will not brag about Not Called Common very much, just because I'd rather other people talk about our music. But the one thing that I do appreciate is I feel like whatever we did, nothing sounded like it. Even though we wrote this song, like we wrote a song that sounded like Jeff Buckley. To us, we thought we were ripping off Jeff Buckley. How Can You Love Me sounds nothing like Jeff Buckley. And
that's your effort to be like.
And well, there was that song, and then the other song we did in 7/8. That the song we did in 7/8, which I'm totally blanking out on the title, was a direct Jeff Buckley ripoff in our mind. Like we thought, oh, people are going to hear this and think Jeff Buckley. Now anybody else that listens to it, it sounds nothing like it. But I feel like no matter what we did, we were always trying to be original, which actually ended up being our detriment at the end. But and that's the one. If I had one knock on the majority, not all, but the majority of the Christian music scene, is that a lot of it is chasing the coattails of what's out there. And one of my beliefs is that we were created not just to be in this world, but to be leaders of this world. And that means that we lead in all areas, even art.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, but that's kind of my thoughts on that.
So let's see what you think about this next one, and see if this next one is not, riding on the coattails of somebody else, but see if y'all think that this group is a little bit more original. I'm just going to play it. I'm not going to tell you who it is. Y'all can figure it out.
Okay, let's do it. Owl City.
You can all call me crazy.
Yeah,
Things that
that's all you had to do.
All you had to do is hear the singer, yeah?
you can laugh all you
Dude,
want
this is
to.
one of Christian music album that I can listen to the whole thing.
When we all come together and learn to set aside our heads, we can learn to love our neighbor, yeah, just like we would love ourselves. We got to come together, 'cause in the end we can make it all right. We got to break the
Yeah.
through all of the storms. We got to come together, 'cause in the end we can make it all right. We got to learn to love.
So,
Trying to get us copyright claimed. Come on.
Man, that is no one's going to copyright Third Day. Come on.
there it is. I was going to say, who is it? Third Day.
It's
Okay.
Third Day, man. Conspiracy number 5. In fact, I went about a few months ago. That's all I listened to for about 3 or 4 weeks.
And so that was their song. That was the title track off that album. That was called Come Together.
Yeah.
And so I remember that we all worked at Courtyard together when I got really into that album.
Yeah.
And that album stayed inside of my Nissan 240 SX.
Until it got stolen.
until the system got stolen. And
Yeah.
and hey, Christian music episode, the one of the Isley albums was in my CD player when it got stolen from my car.
Oh my
So,
gosh.
but yeah, so Third Day, are they a little bit more original sounding, or would you say that they're kind of trying to sound like somebody mainstream?
Yeah, there was a movement there for a while. I'm sorry. What'd you
What
say?
are you gonna say they sound like though?
Yeah, I was gonna say for me, like when they came out. Jennifer Knapp came out. Jars of Clay came out. They were a little bit ahead of that, and then Caedmon's Call came out. They all came out around the same
Friggin'
time,
Caedmon's Call.
and all of those bands, Houston's own Caedmon's Call.
Did you ever see him at Metro?
I never saw him at Metro. No, that was after, or I don't know where I was. I just wasn't there. But all of those bands came together. And what's crazy about Third Day is I remember I was in Dallas and I was listening to 97.9 The Eagle, and they played all classic rock and all that stuff. And they played Third Day for about a week. And this is when the album first. It was when Conspiracy Number 5 came out, and all of a sudden it's like they blew up and then they disappeared off radio. And a lot of the speculation is that they realized later that they were a Christian band and they took them off the radio. And I felt like that was real diss. But I mean, I was very fortunate. I actually got to see Third Day in concert with Jennifer Knapp opening up. And those guys are just authentic. They're amazing players. They're one of those bands that if you see them live, they lay it out there on their sleeve, kind of like Devil Wears
Can't see
Prada.
him live anymore.
Yeah, well,
They've
I don't know if you'll see them live anymore.
saw him at Passion, like when Passion first started,
Oh wow.
like in 96, 97.
Okay. Did you go with the UNT group that went there?
No, I hadn't moved to UNT at that point.
Okay.
I was with the BSM at the junior college down where I live, down by where I grew up, and saw them. Thought, that's an interesting band. They didn't sound like anything that was up on stage. There was kind of like at a side stage. And then I remember about 6 months later when their first album came out and the single Blackbird dropped. And that's all everybody was singing was Blackbird.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what I find interesting about Third Day? They started out as like a Southern rock, kind of Christian band, and then turned into that band that we were talking about as they got older that still had the rock edge to them, but they really became like a praise and worship band.
Yeah.
Like
Agreed.
In the later years, when you went to a Third Day concert, it was more of hey, welcome to 2 hours of praise and worship led by Third Day.
Yeah.
Which I'm not knocking, I'm not complaining. Those are great, and I highly advise anybody. Go sit in on a concert like that and tell me you at least don't feel something.
Yeah.
You
No,
know?
I agree. It was interesting when I saw him because one of the things that they did that I just wasn't expecting was they every 2 or 3 songs they would stop and he would say, "Hey, let's bring the focus back to what's here," and he'd pray, like, let's God, let's get our focus back on you and this and that, and we're having a good time, but it's not about us, it's about you. And then they play 2 or 3 songs and they go, and I was like, it was kind of weird at first, but then as I've gotten older, I understand. And, but I love bands like that. I went and took 2 of my students to go see Devil Wears Prada, and they were playing with some pretty heavy hitters at the time. And at the end of their set, before they played the last song, they go, and of course, this is all screamo stuff, like they're yelling and screaming and guttural. And he goes, before we do our last song, we just want to give all our praise and thanks to the Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. Here's our last song. If you don't know him, come talk to us. And then they went into this, it was like, they're Christian? Like, I didn't know this. But I love bands that kind of surprise you. And I mean, Del Wars Prada, the last time I saw them, they were opening up for Marilyn Manson. So I mean, and Slayer was on that, and then Slipknot was the headliner. So I love stuff like that.
So what we'll do, the first three were kind of, I would say almost my personal kind of like, I don't want to say walk, but early on, like what I liked back in the day when I was very early. These last ones here are what I'm listening to like right now.
Okay.
And so these are, and I think you'll see how the sound has changed, at least from the early 2000s into what we're in right now. So I'm going to go ahead and play this next one. Now it's going to come in. I'm halfway through the song in on the chorus.
Okay, let's do it.
Dude. So that is Church of the City featuring John Reddick. That's big on the Christian radio network right now. He's got a couple other songs, but what from this video, what it looks like now what he's kind of big into is they do like these worship concerts.
Mm-hmm.
And so you get like these praise and worship concerts. And from the video that I'm watching, that's what that looks like it is. But yeah, I mean, and I specifically chose that song because I knew Christian earlier would say he would prefer, like he prefers songs that use the word Jesus and use his name. And it's not just talking about you and the different pronouns. He specifically said in there that, you know, Jesus, you are alive. So he's actually talking, and you know, and saying his name out loud, which I think is great.
But it takes like 8 or 9 years to get to that point.
But he gets there. But he gets there.
Said. That's what she said.
8 or 9.
Oh wait, this is a Christian episode. Can I do those jokes?
Jesus
Well,
loves
if you can't do those jokes in church, you can't do them at all.
I
Jesus
know.
loves you, homie.
One of my favorite quotes from Louis Pina. If I can't say it in church, I shouldn't say it at all.
That's right. But man, so that's kind of like that song right there. I'm way into right now. So
it's very. I mentioned it just a second ago. That kind of music reminds me of that kind of music. I say it like it's bad or whatnot, but that style of music, I should say, and that specific style of worship is very, very reminiscent of when I would go to Metro in Houston every Monday night. That's where Caedmon's Call got their start.
Sons and Daughters.
Sons and Daughters got their start there. Yeah. But just that very, and I get it. You've got to appeal to a wide swath of people, especially at one of those praise and worship concerts. But I mean, it's just it's very surface. And I know out there are surface level Christians still, ones who drink milk, don't eat the meat, you know. But you see, you get that reference, right? And that's the kind of music I like that makes a reference like that,
That's
And
funny.
and really the ones who have been to Sunday school and read their Bible and memorized their verses get that reference, you know. And so the "You Keep Hope Alive," it's just the. And another thing that just kind of rubs me the wrong way as far as praise and worship is concerned is the singing prayer, and you know, when they kind of in that little singy voice, "Jesus, we love you," you know, like, come on now, just sing the song. Let me sit and bask in the music and don't interrupt the flow. Whatever. That's just my own personal. I don't like that.
Get off
But-
my lawn.
Yeah, this is my get off the lawn segment. But yeah, as soon as you played that song, you saw what I did. I got very uninterested.
Yeah.
And it's what happens to me in church too. When songs like that get played, I'm just like, okay, this isn't for me. I'm gonna step back for a second and just kind of observe and listen.
Yeah. Yeah, for me, I mean, praise and worship music is kind of hit or miss for me. And it's not that I don't believe in the power of praise and worship music. I just, for me personally, like when I was listening to it, I was thinking the drummer that I currently play with, a guy named Sam. I was thinking of just, oh, dude, Sam and I would have done this, and Sam and I would have done that. We would have changed up this, and like I'm thinking of all the musical things that we do. Like at that one part where there's the break, I do this bass because I play bass at church. I do this bass drop, the boo, you know, when we go into that section, and I was like, man, it's so much better when we do that bass drop and all that, you know, like. But I don't necessarily. This is a great song, though. I mean, I'll tell you, I love this song, but this is not. There's a couple songs that when we play them, I can't do anything but listen to the lyrical content. But this is one of those songs that I'm like, okay, like, and I'll tell you, the guy that sang that track, I forget the song that's out right now. There's a song that's real popular right now. Whatever that song is, whoo! I mean, the first time I heard it, I mean, it's
By the same artist?
the same artist
By
but
John Reddick?
Yeah, it's John Reddick, but it's with another group. Like it's like Hillsong or something. But they're in a
Okay.
circle and people are like worshiping around them.
Got it.
And it is that now that song like that. Woo, that performance. I wish I could remember the name of it, but that's really good too. But okay, so play us another one of these tracks you have. I'm
So
enjoying
so this will be this is the last one. I've played this before, but this artist right now is super popular right now. So I'm just gonna play.
Are you gonna greet us with a holy kiss? Is that the song?
No,
Or sloppy wet kiss?
I'm sure you've played this at church.
I searched the world, but it couldn't fill me. Maps empty praise and treasures of fame are never enough. Then you came along and put me back together. And every desire is now satisfied here in your love. Hey. Oh, there's nothing better than you. There's nothing better than you. Lord, there's nothing is better than you. Oh.
And so yeah, so that the artist is Brandon Lake.
Mhm.
Right, that's Graves into Gardens. That's he's with Elevation Worship there. And I mean, that song right now is like it's in the rotation on the radio. It gets played like every hour on the hour.
Yeah. It's a great track.
It's such a good song, and it didn't. I didn't let it get to where it actually blows up, and they're just going to town in the song.
Bum, 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 bum.
Yeah, but I mean, Brandon Lake has so much stuff out there right now, and so he's got another song that he does with them. It's called Testimony.
Mm-hmm.
And that track is actually really good too. He's got a lyric in that song. It's something like, the one miracle that I can't believe is that like my name is registered in heaven. It's just, I mean, I'm like, wow. So yeah, I like his lyrics and the lyrical content that he brings. And
Yeah.
so that's kind of what I got right there.
I mean, he's great. I mean, so the hard part I have with the current Christian music scene, not all of it, but 80% of it, in my opinion, is very much the same. I mean, different vocals as far as tone, but they all sound very similar. That doesn't discount what they're doing. I think it was Hillsong put out a video like 2 years ago that was really cool and experimental, and it was praise and worship, and it was like 8 or 12 songs that they put together, but it was real artsy and cool, and I absolutely love that stuff. It's not necessarily conducive to praise and worship in the sense that I'm just focusing on just that. But for me, who is more visual and very much musically, like I'm always listening to the background. Like even with that, I'm like, oh, listen to that acoustic guitar and the drums when I come in and blah, blah, blah. Like that song is it's just a little derivative for me, but I do love it. But for me, like things that move me tend to kind of fall a little bit more outside the box on stuff like that. But I mean, I'm not going to knock them for what they're doing, but I mean, he's great. What he does is great, and it's easy. I mean, it's easy to lead worship with songs that are easier to play and sing.
Sure.
So, Fisher, what's your thoughts?
What you said.
Oh my gosh.
But that's it.
I mean, it's as long as it's in the format of what you just played, I'm always going to be very skeptical, cynical. You use your adjective, whichever one you want. Just because, like I've stated, like it can be very, it can be very surface, and so surface to the point that who am I singing to, right?
Yeah.
Which I think is especially because that's what really, in my mind, that's what separates Christian music from everything else. Is everything else is singing about things, and in Christian music, in my opinion, if you're doing it correctly, you're singing to someone, to Christ. You know, when we depend too much on pronouns and just being very vague for the sake of we've got thousands of people out and we've got to reach as many people, I think you would be better served to just come straight out and be like a Crowder or a Phil Wickham and just be straight up Jesus this, Jesus that, right?
Sloppy wet kiss.
Sure, if that's what you want to call it. I hear that acoustic guitar and it's the same 3 chords that everybody plays in praise and worship, and I'm just like, boop, turn it off. And that is between me and the Lord, right? As we like to say in Christian circles.
It's between me and Jesus.
Just like that's my heart issue. You know, I need to, but I know what I like. I know what I prefer when I hear it, right?
Yeah.
I like songs that are specific, and if we're gonna do praise and worship, let's go full blast and talk about His Majesty and His. Put it all out there.
Yeah.
That's just my thoughts.
Yeah. And I get it. I mean, I agree with you there. I don't think that you're saying anything that I disagree with. So, you know, and Ryan likes it. And it's kind of like, you know, Catholic versus, well, okay, let me rephrase this.
Oh,
it's like
boy.
the Episcopal Church versus the Methodist Church versus non-denominational versus Baptist. like for me, whatever it is that's pushing people in that direction of Christ, I'm all, as long as it's not, hey, we're sacrificing cats and killing people, but we're doing
All
this in the
things
name of
work to His
Jesus.
glory,
Like
right?
that's that goes against,
that's biblical.
yeah,
All
but
things work to His glory. So I mean,
yeah. So if they're pushing people towards, my dad's church is super legalistic, and it takes a committee to form a committee, to have a committee that makes a decision about the committee that makes the final decision on what to spend money on, and that works for them. I think it's ridiculous, but that's their thing. I don't have to wear a suit when I go to church. It doesn't mean that I'm less Jesus than the person who wears a suit every Sunday.
Right.
I mean,
right.
and I think with the music, like, I may not get into it, and I totally support what Fisher's saying, but I also totally support Ryan in the fact that this is a song that when he hears it, it puts him there, and it gets him there, and
Right.
and puts him in that mindset to have those conversations, and to be in that mindset to worship.
Ultimately, like, I believe that we are beings that we were created to worship. Like, that is our peak function on this world, is to worship. That's why when we listen to music moves us the way it does. And when you go to concerts, you see people with hands in the air. And when you go to a praise and worship concert, like, I don't care who you are, you sit and you listen to an arena full of people praise and worship, singing praises and worship to Jesus. And especially like when they just let the crowd sing and all you hear is thousands of people singing in one voice, like, that's the ultimate peak worship experience right there.
Mm-hmm.
We are all doing what we were meant to do on this earth, and is to praise His name. Like, if it's a song like the one we just heard, great. If it's a song like songs that I prefer, great. But that's what we're doing ultimately, is we're worshiping. And are we worshiping these secular songs that sing about things, or are we worshiping the God that our praise and worship sings about? And I think that's the big, and there's rant number 2. But can you tell I have a lot of thoughts on Christian music?
I think it's great. No,
It's
I totally
awesome.
support you. Yeah.
I think, but it's, I don't know, especially with something as serious and as weighty as eternity, right? Like, if I'm going to sing about it, I'm not going to be flippant. I'm not going to be vague about it. I'm going to be specific, because I want you to understand. And, if I was in my 20s, I'd be more on the side of the hellfire and brimstone. But I'm not in my 20s anymore, and I'm more of the, like, one of my favorite songs, even though it's a cheesy song, is Red Letters by DC Talk. And, like, all they're saying is just go read the letters that are printed in red. And for those of you who don't know, though, a Bible that has red letters those are the words that Jesus spoke.
Some versions, not all translations.
Right.
But yeah.
Some, if it has red letters, not all Bibles have red letters. They're usually King James.
Yeah. That band, the Red Letters, was really good too.
Yeah, they were. Too bad they couldn't keep that name. But no, it gets at the heart of why we're here, why we were placed on this earth, right? Was to glorify and worship God. And my taste is, let's be as specific as possible when we do it.
Yeah.
So,
Amen.
Good stuff.
Well, so Joel used a phrase, I don't disagree with what you're saying, and then he used the word ridiculous, which is a great segue into let's get to his first listen, because we're going to disagree with him and how ridiculous it's going to be, possibly.
Well, you're lucky this is the Christian episode, or I
Shots
would sit there
fired.
and say some words to you, son of a gun. No, I'm kidding.
You young whippersnapper.
You whippersnappers. So today's first listen is keeping in line, and I would say this: we're gonna have to revisit this whole episode again, because I would love to get a top 5 from Fisher of his
Yes.
artist and a top 5 of mine, because the one thing I do want to kind of put out there is there's this kind of popular music thing that's on the radio, and that's great. But there's all these great Christian artists, like the one that we're going to listen to today. This is a Christian band that was sent to me by my friend Jessica.
Hey,
Clinton.
hang on, there's feedback coming somewhere.
No.
Okay. I'll
This is going to be
continue.
weird. Halfway through this episode, your headphones are changing. I love it.
Okay.
And
Take-
jam in on the one.
Man, so not only do I have problems with my camera being chewed up by my dog, I have headset problems. So this is a track that was sent to me by a good friend of mine named Jessica Clinton. Jessica and Larry in California. I hope y'all are doing well. And like I said previously, for me, I find it difficult to get into Christian music that I listen to just on the day. Like I usually fill it with other music instead. But this is the band that I came across because it was sent to me and I instantly connected to it. So I'm not going to choose anything other than the song that was sent to me. And that's going to be our first listen today. So I'm not even going to tell you who it is until we listen to it. So here you go. Okay, so let's try this again. Let's see if it works.
2.
Okay, can you hear the piano?
Yes.
Man. I was thinking y'all really thought this song sucked.
All that I'm longing for is found in you, my God. Oh, your love flows like a river to my soul.
I can already tell you I like it.
You do or don't?
I do.
Okay.
Fill up
Wait till it gets to the middle
my heart
section.
till it overflows. You make me come alive. Your spirit lives in me. You bring the dead.
Like, I hope it stays just like this.
And cause the
I will not confirm nor deny.
Oh, your love flows like a river to my soul. And you
I love those rim shots.
my heart till it overflows. And so I bow in humble adoration. I surrender, 'cause nothing else compares to knowing you, God. Nothing else can ever take your place. So Lord, I come to give to you and
Nice change up.
Your love is never ending. Your grace is everlasting, and you fill me up to overflowing. Who can contain the depths of your love? Your truth is never failing, and your peace surpasses understanding. And you fill me up to overflowing. Who can contain the depths of your love? Who can contain the depths of your love? Who can contain the depths of your love? Who can contain the depths of your
Okay, that's our first listen today. And that is a band called Rivers and Robots, and the song is called Overflow. All I'm going to say.
That I'm gonna go out there. I'm gonna say it. That was your best first listen. That really was. That was actually like, I didn't know what I was gonna expect after like the first 10 to 15 seconds. I was like, I don't know. But man, like it built and built and built and built and built and so yeah, no. And then when it got to like what Christian said, like that change, like when that it got to that section, and then it just hit like they hit the pocket and they were just chugging along and they were just gone. And
Yeah.
I was like, okay, yeah, there we go. So
Yeah.
yeah, that I would like to see that them play like live.
Yeah.
They sound like a band, or that sounds like a band that would be fun to go sit in like a Club Dada or like a Curtain Club or something, to sit there and just like a real small venue and just listen.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I liked it.
I told you while the song was playing, I liked it.
Yeah.
I will say this: this is the first listen where I'm actually looking up the band, and
I will send y'all the link.
I downloaded the album that this comes off of. This song comes off of.
Yeah.
It's just three guys. I mean, they're for three guys. That's pretty solid sound they got going on there. You know.
Yeah.
I'll agree with Ryan. This is your best first listen. I mean, but
I got
I've liked a lot of your. I've liked more of your first listens than Ryan has. That's. For
But I
sure.
never get both of
Yeah.
y'all. I always get one or the other. I never get both.
This was a very. They kind of reminded me of you guys, Not Called Common. To be honest, I
Yeah.
got a
Mhm.
very not called common feel to it.
Yeah, I would say the feel definitely. The overall sound probably not, but the feel definitely. And as
No.
far as bands, like when you think of bands that kind of you feel like they have influences of, is there any bands that off the top of your head that just kind of reminds you of?
I'm trying to go back and think of how it sounded when I listened to it.
Yeah. See, for me,
This is a very
That-
Liquid Lounge type of band, at least based off that one song. This is
Yeah.
a band
Mhm.
that we would hear at the Liquid Lounge.
Yeah.
So, and I immediately associate Liquid Lounge with Portishead.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're, so
Exactly.
they're
Yeah.
kind of a they're kind of a Portishead sounding band.
Yeah.
Definitely not as morose as Portishead, but
Yeah. A little bit more positive. Yeah.
yeah, just a bit.
Yeah. I heard a
So-
little Sigur Ross too.
I did too. Yeah.
So
A lot of
yeah,
Sigur Rós.
the band that crossed my mind while we listened to that, and I don't know this band as well as both of you, but there were times in there where I was like, "Oh, this is very Radiohead-esque."
Yeah.
Those are the three bands you guys named. Well, I named one of the three, but that's exactly. It's not Radiohead, but it has elements,
Yes.
and
Right, it's not
and it
Portishead,
has
but it
elements
has
of
elements.
Portishead. Yeah, I just remember my friend sent it to me, and I was at my office before everyone got there, and I put it on, and I literally sat there and I stopped working, and I just transported.
All European bands, by the way.
Yeah, exactly.
Sigur Rós, Portishead, Radiohead, all European, two being British.
Yeah. So I'm so glad that you guys liked it. And the other thing that I love, and I, going with what Christian said, their lyrics are biblically based. They're scripture. They're literally scripture. So,
Yeah. That's basically what they were singing in that song was scripture. That was one of those bands, one of those songs that if you just took, if you put those lyrics in a band like a praise and worship band that you would see at church, I think that song would have been obviously been completely different. But I think for someone like myself would have just been like, whatever.
yeah.
But for me, praise and worship is about the music as well. God bless those musicians to create that music and to have the creativity to write the music that they wrote for that song and then put those lyrics to that song. Like, it's just, you just stand back and praise God, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I'm so glad that you guys liked it. And for you that are listening, this has been a fun episode. I love music and I love talking about Christian music too. And if this is something that y'all liked, if y'all would like to hear more alternative Christian music, and we played some that was kind of more kind of direct and known, we'd love to hear that. If you like the first listen, if you'd like to have more of what we talk about, or if you have a topic that you'd like us to cover, we'd love to hear that. But also, we are on Apple Podcasts. We're on Spotify. We're on YouTube. Heck, we'll come hang out at your house, like whatever
Hell
it takes.
yeah.
We also have some new things on Instagram. We're going to start covering some albums of the week there's just so much music we can't cover on the podcast. So we're going to start covering those. We got some pretty questionable mini-sodes. So if, let us know what you're thinking.
Got some brave members of this group that just put their stuff out there for the whole world to hear.
Hey, I am honest to a fault, or open to a fault, however you want to take that. But let us know what you think. If there's things you like, let us know. We'd love to hear it. Morocco, Australia, New Zealand.
So for you, Morocco.
Hey, we want to hear from you. So put it in the comments. If you're on Spotify or one of these other streaming services, send us a message on YouTube. Just get in there. Let us know, subscribe and like, and let us know what you're thinking. But Fisher, who are we talking about today for channels to watch?
Channels to watch. Couple of reaction channels. The first one is Mr. Video. He's a hip hop guy, and based on some of the hats that he's worn here lately, I think he's based here in Texas.
Cool.
A lot of Houston stuff. So check him out, Mr. Video. He reacts to music all over the place. One of my favorite ones that he's done, he just reacted to Hank Williams Jr. Country Boy Can Survive.
Classic.
It's pretty, yeah, classic. And then the next reaction channel I got is One that I've been watching for a while, and I'm surprised it's taken me this long to shout her out, but it's Pink Metalhead. And it's an African American young woman who, like a lot of the reaction channels I watch, was a loved hip hop, and now she's gone down the rabbit hole of metal and hard rock. And so it's really cool to watch people who didn't grow up listening to the music that we listen to react to it for the first time now as adults. And these channels do that. So there you go.
Man, that's good stuff. Pink Metal Head.
Pink Metalhead.
Pink Metalhead. Okay. Well, hey, so we clearly did not cover even a fraction of the Christian music that's out there. We will have a future Christian music episode to follow up so these two guys can give you their top 5. Also, you heard us talk about Joel's band, Not Called Common. I'm going to put it out there for everybody to know now. We will have in the future an all Not Called Common episode. And it will be music listening heavy.
Glorious.
Okay, we're going to play you a lot of tracks. I should say that man right there will play you a lot of tracks because he's got all of it.
I got all of them.
But man, it's going to be good stuff.
Well, what I look forward to that episode is, you and I, Ryan, we got a behind the scenes look pretty much from day one to the day they ended. But I'm gonna like hearing the I guess the stories behind the songs, like those two songs, like how can you let me been around, and this is the first time I'm hearing about. Oh, we thought we ripped off Jeff Buckley when we wrote that song.
Oh no, we did. It doesn't sound like it, but we did.
That will be brought up.
Fun.
That'll be brought up. But I mean, stay tuned for sure for that episode because it's going to be fun. And we may try to do our best to get a few of the other members from that band on that show. We'll see what we can do. That way we can just have a fun little reunion with the band. It'll be great. Until then, like they said, keep liking, subscribing, hit the cowbell button, all of that stuff.
Feed that algorithm.
Feed it. It's hungry. It needs to be fed. But until then, keep living, keep loving, keep listening, and as always, keep rocking.
Metal.
So
I don't even know what we were talking about.
I don't either, but I noticed I was slurring towards the end of the last episode.
I can't believe you got drunk on the episode.
I was starting to do this at the back of my mouth.
Nice.
I mean, luckily I still held it together and was able to complete coherent thought, but I was feeling a little good. So
Sweet.
What's wrong with that?
we are going to dial it back this one.
Do we just let it go?
Dead air. Can you hear us? Hello? Can you hear us?
Oh my God. Yes. The devil is alive on the Christian episode.
Right? Because we
because we got no music and we got no sound from Joel.
This is the best. So, how about
So,
the Cowboys?
get up and give them a dance, right? We're going to start singing, Our God is an awesome
So
God. He reigns through heaven and earth.
Yes.
There's your first listen, ladies and gentlemen.